Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news. At 69, Princess Diana's sister drops a royal bombshell and turns King Charles and Camilla speechless. Despite the fact that she is not well known, Lady Sarah McCorquodale is considered to be among the most influential members of the British aristocratic hierarchy. At the present time, Princess Diana's eldest sister has reached the age of 69. Being in close proximity to the monarchy, experiencing personal loss, and living under the enduring shadow of a global icon have all had an impact on her life. Over the course of many decades, she has been the unassuming guardian of her sister's memory, serving as a representation of Spencer's resilience in the face of terrible public tragedy. The carefully constructed wall of serenity suddenly broke, exposing the deep-seated concerns and persistent anguish that royal observers had long assumed but never heard uttered with such raw personal suffering. However, in a moment of unguarded emotion, the wall of calm abruptly shattered. The confession was not about a secret that had been kept concealed or a scheme by the royal family. Rather, it was about something that was far more substantial and tragic evidence that the same problems that have been worrying the general people for more than 25 years had also been hurting her family. The tears that she shed were not for anything new. Rather, they were for an old wound that had not yet settled. The tale told by Lady Sarah has to do with the sister who was at the epicenter of every historical event. In the beginning, she was a potential bride for a future king. Later on, she became the link that led her sister to the same destiny. Finally, she became the protector of a heritage that was created through love, rebellion, and sadness. Is she aware of the terrible reality that she is aware of the burden of a nation's sadness, the burden of unanswered questions from a dark night in Paris, and the quiet commitment to preserve the memory of the sister that the world could never forget, are all things that weigh heavily on my shoulders. A night when the world came to a stop. In the early hours of the morning of August 31st, 1997, I was overcome with an unexplainable terror. Reports that were brief and fragmented flashed over television screens and crackled across radio waves with an announcement that seemed unlike something that could have happened. Princess Diana had passed away. A vehicle accident that occurred in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris resulted in the deaths of the 3 individuals involved, her friend Dodi Fayed, and their driver, Henri Paul. People from all around the world were taken aback when they found out that Diana was an unstoppable force of splendor and generosity. The scenario that was told was one of persistent attempts to find something. A group of paparazzi on motorcycles chased the black Mercedes S280 into the tunnel at a high rate of speed in the hope of capturing a photograph that would bring them a significant amount of financial gain. This was the last and fatal intrusion into a life that had been lived solely under the scrutiny of the camera. The medical staff at the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital labored for hours in an attempt to save her life, but they were unsuccessful before dawn. Lady Sarah McCorquodale was not only suffering a public catastrophe as a result of the news, but she was also experiencing a very personal catastrophe. Over the course of the subsequent few hours, I was overcome with a mixture of confusion and unadulterated wrath. After that, she gave an interview for a BBC show in which she discussed the dreadful period of time when the world was being offered false hope. She said that over a period of 2 hours, the presenters of each and every news channel were continuously emphasizing that the individual was injured but expected to make a full recovery. It was clear that she was still fuming with rage. I don't know why, but it made me so mad. Despite the fact that the general public was still holding out hope for a miracle, the Spencer family had already begun to come to terms with the terrible finality of the situation. It was excruciating for Sarah to have private knowledge and public reporting that were so far apart. She will never forget how awful it was. That was the first of many peculiar aspects of her sister's passing that would remain in her memory and serve as the foundation for a sadness that was equal parts astonishment and loss. It was the first of many unusual things that would linger in her mind. In the days that followed, London was washed over by a tremendous surge of emotion. Outside of both Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, tens of thousands of people began to gather together. Flowers, handwritten messages, teddy bears, and candles were among the gifts that they delivered. Through the swelling of a sea of cellophane and petals, the royal gates were transformed into a massive and peaceful monument. People who had never met one another shed tears in each other's arms because they had suffered the loss of a woman who was more than simply a queen. Princess Diana was more than just a princess. She was a symbol of a more modern and compassionate monarchy of the United Kingdom. She dealt with HIV/AIDS patients without fear, stepped into an Angolan minefield, and was honest about her own struggles with mental health and bulimia, all of which contributed to the profound and genuine affection that she received from millions of people. It was necessary for Sarah to cope with this new and shattered reality on her own, away from the public mourning that was taking place in front of the palace doors. For the purpose of bringing Diana's body back to the United States, she traveled to Paris with Prince Charles, accompanied by her younger sister Jane. On the other hand, her two young nephews, Prince William, who was only 15 years old, and Prince Harry, who was only 12 years old, were her most important responsibility. She made the decision to accept a job that she had never desired yet, was unable to refuse. She turned into a source of support for two boys who had lost their mother in the most public and traumatic way conceivable. She did this in a way that was completely quiet. In addition to dealing with her personal grief, she had to deal with the fragile emotions of a future king and his brother, the fate of the House of Windsor, and the confusing legacy of a sister who was adored, but also tragically misunderstood. All of these things must be dealt with simultaneously. It is the responsibility of a sister to safeguard a legacy. Over the course of the week that passed between Diana's passing and her burial, there was a great deal of anxiety and difficult decisions to make. Initially, there were many who were critical of the royal family, claiming that they adhered to protocol too strictly and did not exhibit sufficient passion in public. On the other hand, they had a difficult time coping with the unprecedented outpouring of sadness that the nation experienced. While this sensitive issue was unfolding, Sarah McCorquodale put forth a lot of effort behind the scenes. In conjunction with the authorities of the royal family and her brother Charles Spencer, she was involved in the planning of a funeral that would honor Diana's unique position as the people's princess, while adhering to the stringent regulations of the monarchy. The 6th of September 1997 is a day that will forever be recognized in the annals of modern current history. In order to witness the tragic journey that Diana's coffin, which was draped in the royal standard, took from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey, more than 1 million people lined the streets of London. The picture of her two sons walking behind the funeral procession with their heads down is widely considered to be one of the most emotionally charged photographs of the 20th century. The expression on Sarah's face was one of controlled melancholy as she strolled beside them. She straightened up straight and pointed her gaze in a forward direction. At that very moment, she was more than simply a sorrowful sister. She was a symbol of the fortitude that the Spencer family had a quiet guardian who was standing up for Diana for the very last time. However, her responsibilities did not come to an end after the cameras shuttered. During the process of drafting her will, Diana appointed Frances Shand Kidd, her mother, and Sarah as co-executors. Following her mother's decision to stand aside, Sarah assumed the role of the main character. Because of the magnitude of this job, she needed to demonstrate a great deal of loyalty, caution, and awareness of her sister's objectives. As Diana's guardian, she became responsible for protecting her private world, which consisted of her letters, personal photographs, and most valued possessions. These were not only objects, rather they were fragments of a life that contained memories and emotions that no one else could ever really comprehend. She was resolute in her determination to save them, not just for the sake of history, but also for the sake of William and Harry. Rather than merely diamonds and paperwork, she believed that they should have more than that. It is important for them to be aware of the whole reality about their mother, which goes beyond the headlines and the speculation. When this occurred, she was confronted with a challenging issue that she would have to deal with for a number of years. How much of Diana's private life deserved to be kept private, and how much ought to be shared with those who believed that she belonged to them in some way. In a remarkable display of self-control, Sarah navigated that precarious situation. Despite the fact that she concealed the most intimate aspects of Diana's life from the general world, she was also responsible for establishing a significant connection between the princes and their mother's legacy. She helped keep the spirit of the woman alive, not only the spirit of the princess, by sharing humble tales at family reunions, by giving away her belongings in a meaningful manner, and by constantly reminding people of Diana's courage and generosity. She took measures to ensure that her sons inherited Diana's values, which included her capacity for empathy, her defiant demeanor, and her concern for those who were vulnerable. In the year 2017, Sarah was elected to the position of president of the Diana Princess of Wales Memorial Fund. She was in charge of shutting it down and donating the leftover funds to groups that shared her sister's passions and interests. She assumed the role without making any public announcements, just as she had done with every other post she had held since 1997. Not as a crown to flaunt, but rather as a profound and personal commitment of love, she took Diana's inheritance with her to the grave. The shadows that continue to loom over a whole city, the issues that were raised on that night in Paris cannot be forgotten, not even after years of tranquil duty. It has always been a source of frustration for Sarah that the official account of a terrible incident has inconsistencies. The passing of Diana is a well-known event in the annals of history. It is still a wound that has not been healed for her sister, and there are aspects of it that do not make sense. There are many things that are bothersome and persistent, but one of them is the seatbelt. The members of Diana's family and the security guards were aware of the fact that she was almost obsessed with wearing one. In a number of interviews, Sarah has said that she was religious about putting on her seatbelt. The behavior had been so ingrained in her that she was never able to break it. However, she did not have one on her person on the evening of August 31st, 1997. Both Dodi Fayed and Henry Paul, the driver, were not present at the time. There was only one person who was belted in, and that was Trevor Rees-Jones, the bodyguard who was the only one to survive the tragedy. When it comes to this knowledge, Sarah has never felt comfortable. Why would Diana cease doing something that she had put so much effort into, particularly on a night when cameras were following her around? In the haste to get out of there, did you make a momentary error of judgment? How about a straightforward instance of forgetting? What else could it have been? Neither does Sarah claim that she is in possession of the answers, nor does she subscribe to the intricate conspiracy theories that have developed over the course of time. However, she claims that the disparity is something that genuinely upsets her. The failure of individuals to use seatbelts was revealed to be a significant contributor to the deaths that occurred. As far as Sarah is concerned, the issue is still a horrific what-if that is frozen in time itself. In the days and weeks that followed, the flow of material that was both confused and false only served to add to the atmosphere of mystery. During the time that she was sitting there with the terrible news of her sister's passing, the media across the globe was spinning a different tale. Not only were the first reports which said that Diana was injured but expected to make a full recovery incorrect, but they also seemed to be a terrible kind of psychological anguish. Because of this misleading information, the family had the impression that they were living in a dream. It is possible that this inaccurate information was the result of an accident or a deliberate attempt to manipulate the news. The events that took place that evening gave individuals the impression that they were surrounded by a mist of uncertainty and unusual behavior. This made them feel even more confused. Sarah has made the observation that there were a lot of things that the French police did that really don't make sense. As a result, it is clear that she is dissatisfied with the official investigation. Due to the fact that these issues have not been handled, Sarah will always have a sense of unease. These issues include the seatbelt, the contradictory stories, and the questions that have not yet been answered about the investigation. It is not the case that they are components of a larger plot. Rather, they are the little sharp pieces of a tragedy that do not conform to one another. These types of queries, which have been going around for decades without obtaining any meaningful answers, produce their own kind of agony, throwing a long shadow over the history that she has been working so hard to safeguard. This is the story of a life that was made among the upper class. It is necessary to go back in time to a period in which Lady Sarah's life was intimately connected to the monarchy from the very beginning in order to have a sense of the unique role that she plays in this royal drama. It was in the year 1955 that she was born Elizabeth Sarah Lavinia Spencer. She was the eldest daughter of Francis Shand Kidd and John Spencer, the 8th Earl Spencer. Her father was the 8th Earl Spencer. Not only did she live a life of opulence, but she also had to contend with the heavy burden of the history of her family from generation to generation. The homes she grew up in were rich in history and were located in close proximity to the royal family. During their younger years, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward were pals with the Spencer children. Park House, a large mansion located on the Queen's Sandringham estate, was where they made their home. Following that, the family moved to Althorpe House, which has been the Spencers' magnificent ancestral home ever since the year 1508. Living in these walls where you were surrounded by portraits of ancestors who had advised kings and queens and strolled through halls loaded with beautiful art was how you learned about the responsibilities that came with the Spencer name when you were a youngster. Without uttering a single word, they were able to prepare themselves for a life filled with responsibility, popularity, and public scrutiny during their youth. She attended school in the manner that is typical for members of the nobility. She began her education at Riddlesworth Hall Preparatory School and then continued her education at West Heath Boarding School in Kent, which is the same institution that Diana would come to attend in the future. During her time here, she gained the ability to be self-sufficient and tough, all of which will serve her well in the years to come. However, being a Spencer meant that people were always seeking for you, despite the fact that there were many positive aspects associated with being a Spencer. It was common for people to discuss and be interested in the family's lives because of the strong relationship that existed between the family and the royal family. Because of their intimate relationship, Sarah went through a period in her life that is mostly forgotten, but it is still considered to be one of the most intriguing what-ifs in the history of the modern royal family. Prior to the arrival of Diana, Sarah was the first individual to be publicly recognized as a member of the royal family. The near-Queen sister Prince Charles was under pressure to choose a decent wife in the late 1970s. Who he would marry was the buzz of the world as the most eligible bachelor. Lady Sarah Spencer, clever, confident, and well-connected, was a top option. After meeting again at a royal Ascot banquet in Windsor, they began dating in 1977. Sarah was poised, humorous, and authentic at 22. Like Charles, she adored the outdoors and was comfortable in high society. Spencer-Windsor marriage looked likely for a while, uniting two of Britain's most prominent houses. Those who knew them felt a spark. They got along and recognized work pressures. Sarah appeared like the ideal future queen. She was well-bred, elegant, and strong enough for public life. Sarah was also honest, which violated the monarchy's secrecy regulations. In 1978, she gave journalists James Whittaker and Nigel Nelson an honest interview while skiing with pals. She spoke out about her anorexia, her prior problem with drinking, and most crucially, her relationship with the prince, since she felt their conversation was private. Charles was not her favorite, and she wouldn't marry him, whether he were the dustman or the King of England. She gave reporters a scrapbook of newspaper clippings about her royal romance, claiming she was storing them for her grandchildren. Even if her views were honest and contemporary royal circles were shocked. Openly discussing the heir was impolite. Prince Charles reportedly became enraged after seeing the poem. She was told, "You just did something really dumb." The romance ended. Queen Sarah's opportunity vanished. In hindsight, Sarah was too independent and didn't want to be a quiet, subservient royal spouse. She appeared relieved to be stress-free. The history-changing start. That might have ended the narrative, a curious footnote in royal courtships. But fate wasn't done creating the Spencers royals. Sarah remained in Charles's social circle following their breakup. The monarchy was irrevocably changed by her entrance at this time. Charles met Sarah's younger sister Diana at Althorpe in November 1977 on a pheasant hunt. Diana was modest, meek, and madly in love with the Prince of Wales at 16. Charles described her as a very jolly and funny and attractive 16-year-old. Though he didn't consider her a spouse, a seed was planted. Charles thought about Diana years later when his relationship with Sarah ended. They were dating by 1980, and Diana, who was quiet and appeared able to handle royal life, seemed like the perfect bride for the palace. When they engaged in February 1981 and had the wedding of the century, on July 29, 1981, the nation rejoiced. Royal historians always saw the irony. Sarah may have went down St. Paul's Cathedral aisle if she had been less honest and chosen her words better. Diana may have had a peaceful life without the attention that would kill her. Sarah's brief, failed romance and her casual introduction of her sister to her ex-boyfriend changed history. A royal crucible bond. Diana's bond with Sarah strengthened as she faced her new life's perils. Sarah was more than a sister. She was a friend who had experienced Diana's golden prison. Diana's fairy tale marriage began to unravel due to excessive expectations, public pressure, and Charles's longtime love for Camilla Parker Bowles. Sarah supported her. Her position as Diana's ladies-in-waiting made her an official friend and advisor. Sarah accompanied Diana to formal functions to assist her comply with the rigorous restrictions and protect her from constant monitoring. Sarah's calmness supported a stressed princess during a 1993 royal visit to Nepal. Diana's grace was noted, but Sarah was her quiet support. She provided Diana something the crown could never: a connection to her past normality and a secure place to be vulnerable. Sarah's loyalty saved a woman who felt alone and misunderstood in the palace. Lady Sarah McCorquodale and her husband Neil live in Lincolnshire in seclusion. Instead of making loud declarations, she has honored her sister with humble deeds. But whenever she appears with her nephews William and Harry at a funeral or family event, the world remembers how essential she was. She is their live link to their mother and has always helped them become men. Her tears proved that her sorrow had not subsided. She mourned her sister, her nephews, who grew up without their mother, and the Parisian mist of questions. She carries royal memories and love for a sister whose brightness never faded after she died. Unfortunately, some wounds never heal, and the greatest legacies are born in silent, unending love. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.